Order! Order! You are an incorrigible delinquent at times. Behave yourself, man!
The BBC's latest hit drama series, McMafia, charts the rivalry between Eastern European organised crime factions, and London, it suggests, is right in the thick of it. Tanjil Rashid has more.
Сколько раз можно говорить? Я русский человек, ты мой сын, говори со мной по-русски.
London, at the heart of nefarious Eastern European organised crime networks. That's the picture painted by the BBC drama McMafia, in which Russian gangsters launder their money through the city's financial sector. But how accurate is it? This man was for many years at the front line in the fight against money laundering from Eastern Europe, and he says,
very simply, very accurate. It typically ends up in London indirectly, in the sense that the assets are British-based, and that's typically property through foreign-owned companies. London is the world's foreign exchange capital, and there's this huge network of asset management companies and corporate service providers, professional service, the lawyers, the accountants.
There's been increasing scrutiny of the city's role in laundering money from Eastern Europe. Last year, a Guardian investigation showed that $750 million of questionable money had passed into UK bank accounts over a 4-year period. All of the major London-based high street banks were involved. One of the strangest causes of this situation is that rich criminals are attracted to London not because the capital is somehow lawless, but precisely for the opposite reason, because the rule of law is so strong here that they know they can count on London's authorities to protect their private property and their ill-gotten gains. And that's why they choose London as the ultimate destination to launder all their money. The question is, what are London's lawmakers going to do about it?
Well, one good measure the government could take would be to ensure that there are prosecutions of the companies which are in effect front companies that allow money to be laundered through them in the United Kingdom. The number of cases that have been prosecuted is very small indeed, and we require, I would suggest, more energy from the UK authorities to pursue those companies.
You know, in Russia they call everyone a gangster. So what? Papa was a businessman.
But McMafia's portrait of Russian gangsters at large in London is disputed by the Russian government. In a statement, the embassy told us they believe it was misleading and wrong. If anything, a Russian citizen in the UK is much less likely to be imprisoned than an average British resident.
Tanjil Rashid reporting. Well, we're joined now by the Russia expert Luke Harding, who last year in The Guardian exposed the alleged role of London's banks in laundering Russian money. Hello, Luke.
Hello.
It's a good watch, isn't it, for a Sunday night, but how accurate is it?
It's pretty good. The Russian gangsters perhaps a little bit overblown, but the underlying thesis that London, I would say, is I think the most corrupt place on the planet is true. Not because there are gangsters running around with Bob and Rupert in Westminster, but because we facilitate all this stuff. We allow it, we nod it through, our banks, our lawyers, our real estate agents, and every so often we will publish this material. We'll go and see the National Crime Agency, and they will shake their heads and say, it's a bit difficult, the perpetrators are far away, we'd like to do something, but we can't. And I think that's no sensible place to be.
So there's collusion from the Russians, from the Russian government. I know you've suggested in the past there's collusion from here in London where people are making money. Yeah,
I mean, kleptocracy is not a thing of far away. It's actually happening on our doorsteps. You just need to walk around West London and you can see it. And one thing we discovered is that it's firms registered at Companies House in London, one around the corner, which processed $9 billion, by the way, and they've got posh-sounding names. They look okay, but they're owned by mysterious entities in the Cayman Islands, the British Virgin Islands, and so on. And quite often this money is going through British overseas territories. Now, the government could force these territories to publish a register of who owns what, but for reasons that escape me, they don't.
Well, let's find out, shall we? Rupert, Bob, this is so rife, even TV drama writers are making money out of it.
I think it is a consequence of London being a global city, and that brings a downside as well as an upside. I think Luke's right about that. And because it's a comparatively safe place, that's why it happens here. But the government have taken a number of measures. First of all, as far as the National Crime Agency is concerned, we've strengthened very recently the links between that and the Serious Fraud Office by having a specific National Economic Crime Unit which can task those agencies and pull them together much more effectively. Secondly, we strengthened the law to make it easier to prosecute cases of corruption where the corruption occurs abroad but the perpetrators are over here. That's an important step in the right direction. And thirdly, we have much greater transparency than most places on registers of beneficial ownership. And what we have said, we've got agreement from the overseas territories now, is that they will have central registers of ownership. And although they are not all published publicly, they do make all those details available to any law enforcement agency upon request. So that is a major step in the right direction. There's more we can always do. We have to continue to be vigilant. And I think probably we should be looking at some of those bogus companies based here and be more vigilant about that and perhaps put more resource into those issues.
Rupert, you're on the all-party parliamentary group for anti-corruption. We heard in the film there this issue of the rule of law actually protecting some of these people. Shouldn't that same rule of law actually be used to pursue them?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, the programme is fiction, but I mean, there's no smoke without fire. And this kind of culture of secrecy jurisdictions, I think there's 86 million pounds of property. No, hang on, it's more than that, isn't it? Anyway, half of it is in London.
Lots of money.
Yeah, think of a number. No, but honestly, there's, 10,000 alone in the borough of Westminster where we are now, 6,000 in Kensington and Chelsea of these properties that we don't know who really owns them, because in these secrecy jurisdictions it's a company, we don't know who the individuals are, so we could have much greater transparency.
But Luke seems to know who they are.
Yeah, and with respect to Bob, it's not good enough for the overseas territories to sort of give it to the National Crime Agency, because they tell us that they're overwhelmed, and I've talked to people in the banks who say there's so much of this stuff, billions of pounds, it's like trying to play whack-a-croc. They just can't catch it. And the way to do this properly is to publish this, to shine light on these owners and to end the kind of culture of offshore secrecy that I think is kind of blighting this country. Also going through Scotland, by the way. A lot of Scottish schemes registered in Glasgow and places like that. It's not just a London problem. But David Cameron was quite keen to do something about this because his dad was in offshore, his late father. But from Theresa May, I've seen nothing.
I think now, well, Theresa has tried to get an international agreement, Luke, as you know, because I take your point. The problem we have with the overseas territories, all people would do at the moment, they simply move it from, say, British Virgin Islands to Delaware or one of the US jurisdictions, where there's far less transparency than anything in any of the UK jurisdictions.
It's complicated, though, but is there just a lack of political will?
I think that this Theresa May government has dragged its feet somewhat. I mean, we've got a strategy now that came out at the end of last year, but we need proper legislation. And, yeah, David Cameron, remember he did that whole summit about it, and he used to say, let sunlight be the best disinfectant, but there's been very little action.
He actually had an anti-corruption summit, but the problem was 2 months later he was out of office.
Yeah.
And you can't help but thinking that there's a sort of...
Very briefly then, Bob, enough being done?
I think you could never do enough. I think we've taken valuable and important steps. I think events that happened since David's time, sadly, from my point of view, have rather crowded out some of the political agenda, but that doesn't mean we shouldn't return to it once we've
going to have to stop you all there because we've run out of time. Thank you all for coming.